I mentioned Grand Prairie a minute ago. You and I haven't had a chance to talk a little bit about the city-owned water park religious event.
Yeah, buddy.
Okay, let's dive into this because this is a fascinating story. Grand Prairie, Texas, canceled what was to be a private party for Muslims at a city-owned water park after.
Stop
What?
on one thing, because
Okay.
this was where's the story you're reading is from?
Dallas Morning News.
Well, there you are. No, I'm teasing, guys. Not, and herein lies the solution. And I'm going to let you go. It was private only up to a point. If it was thoroughly private, they could do whatever they want. Muslims only, Christians only, Buddhists only, atheists only. But the nature of it stopped being private. But keep reading, and I'll tell you how that happened and why that brought different rules.
Well, I mean, I don't know if this is a distinction with a difference or not. I'm quoting Sarah Bahari from the Dallas Morning News, who wrote, Grand Prairie canceled a private party for Muslims at a city-owned water park after Texas Governor Greg Abbott threatened to pull hundreds of thousands of dollars in state funding, about $500,000 in state funds that he threatened to withhold. The article goes on to say, flyers initially described the event as for Muslims only, with a modest dress code and private prayer area. Amina Knight, a Dallas area mother of 6 who was hosting the event, said she didn't intend to exclude anyone, and later revised the flyer to say all are welcome. She said, as Muslims, we have a modest dress code. Going to a water park can be a challenge. This is a way to have fun and make sure our children and community feel seen. Well, Grand Prairie canceled the event after Abbott threatened to cut off about $500,000 in state funds. So give me your take. I know you're closer to it than I am, but walk us through what happened there and if you think that the resolution is an adequate one.
The complicating factor is they tried to change the status of it, but from something they couldn't do to something they kind of could, because it did involve public accommodation. Now, at the outset, I wondered how much public accommodation laws even mattered, because if it is indeed a private event, we can gather something together and say, hey, this is a Christian event, or the Buddhists and the Muslims and the Jews and the whoever's can do. You can do that if it is truly private. Like, this is our private invitation list. Everybody's Christian, everybody's Muslim, everybody's Jewish, everybody's something, everybody's Irish, everybody's whatever. No, not everybody's white. Can't do that. My friend Mitch Little, who's a state rep and a lawyer, said that the problem here arose, and the reason public accommodation laws kicked in is because on those posters that said Muslim only, but then didn't, they did invite everybody. It's weird. At the same time, it was kind of saying Muslims only, but $50 and you're in. Well, does that mean that only the Muslims can pay to get in? Because as soon as you're inviting the public accommodation rules kick in, and on those public accommodation criteria, you cannot discriminate religiously.
Well, I mean, the pushback that was led by actually one of our fellow radio hosts, Dana Lash, she kind of led the charge to protest this water park day or whatever it was. And her question was, according to the Dallas Morning News, how is a taxpayer-funded, city-owned entity allowed to discriminate against non-Muslims at a public water park? Now, you're arguing they can. Your argument is,
and I love Dana, and when it was Muslims only, and as soon as they invited the public, then they cannot. And she's right, and everybody's right to be up in arms. Once they change the terms, you know what it kind of comes down to is, do you believe them when they change the terms? Do you trust them? And maybe our Islamic community has some trust gaps lately of a sort.
right?
Because if indeed they're saying, it was like the whole Epic Ranch community. Hey, it's going to be a Muslim community, but everybody can live there. I don't think a lot of Jews are going to be, living on Osama bin Laden Street there, and then not that they would have done that. But if they're not literally excluding people, you can have a gathering however you like. And you can. There's freedom of association. But again, as soon as you invite the public accommodation laws kick.
Interesting. Now, you kind of snickered. It's the Dallas Morning News, which, of course, I think it's fair to say has a left-of-center worldview. The article goes on to say, anti-Islamic rhetoric in Texas and across the U.S. has surged in the past year, according to a report by the nonprofit Center for the Study of Organized Hate. Did you know there was such a center?
Wait a minute. What?
The Center for the Study of Organized Hate. How'd you like to go to one of their lunches?
Is there a website?
Yeah.
That sounds like the Southern Poverty Law Center on steroids.
The Center for the Study of Organized Hate. The center traced the current wave of Islamophobia to a single tweet from Governor Greg Abbott in February of 2025, in which he amplified a post calling the Epic City development a Sharia city. Now, the Epic City development. Now, what is that all about? I mean, this is a planned Muslim-centric neighborhood 40 miles northeast of Dallas. It was previously called Epic City, right?
Right, but then it became the Meadow.
The Meadow, a planned Muslim-centric neighborhood. Well, then here's Governor Abbott saying, we got a Sharia city coming to Texas. Get out the popcorn because now it's a party.
And I'm a huge fan of Governor Abbott. And those folks said, we're not going to have Sharia law. There was the whole notion of no-go. Listen, Europe has no-go zones where it's just understood that the local police don't go because it's just a whole different sphere of laws and stuff. And they said, look, we're not going to do that. We know that there's no way we'd get away with that in Texas. And you know what? Maybe they were telling the truth. I don't know. What Governor Abbott and Attorney General Ken Paxton have found is from some regulatory things and some paperwork things and some dotting of the I's and crossing of the T's, there were things in the formative stages of that community that might not have been exactly by the book. And I've always said from the beginning that if you can catch them in a violation of law, then great. And if there's anything that they espouse, because there are portions of the Islamic practice that equality for women, separation of and there's no, when I say church state, I mean keeping government out of church's business and vice versa, religious freedom, freedom of speech, that none of that's in the Quran. So this is antithetical to the American constitutionalist system of government. And if there's anything that begins to smack of an overlap there, you gotta keep track of that. So I think the concerns expressed toward that are thoroughly valid, but that's not what they think over at the Center for the Organized Hate.
Did you find a website? You found a website?
CSOHate.org.
CSOHate.org. Send your donations right there.
On their homepage, manufacturing the Muslim threat.
Manufacturing. That sounds pretty neutral.
Is it possible to be too hopped up about this? Yes. And when I hear that somebody is, there's no such thing as a good Muslim, I'm going to go, throw a brick Pakistani shopkeeper's window. Stop it. But this is a psyop. That it is an attempt to smear any valid, righteous concern about Islamism and say that it must be Islamophobe.
Look, concern about Sharia law coming to the streets of America is not ill-founded. That's not misplaced. There is definitely an effort, and I think we've seen anecdotally. I mean, there are people who say, go to Dearborn, Michigan. You want to talk about as close to a no-go zone as you're going to find.
For full shows, live and on demand, it's Salem News Channel.